started here. Folks can come on in and grab a seat. You can see we have the fireworks up here on the monitors here to kind of get us excited about the next part of this conversation. For those of you who were here in the previous one, we had Jim Redwald, who kind of gave us the data, if you will, the numbers, where things are, kind of what it's looking like in general. And still, the fireworks, if you will, the economy in Virginia is still doing very, very well. We're going to take a little bit of time to talk about taking those dollars, that quantitative analysis, putting it into the, I'll call it the black box of government, with the state legislators and the governor and all the different committees and staff and others who take that information and then put something together, and then out comes the other side of what we all, particularly local government, see, and hopefully we'll be standing up and giving them a standing ovation when they're done with the positive impact that will have on state government or local government and what we're trying to do for our local residents. So with that, again, my name is Dan Storck. I'm an Mount Vernon District Supervisor on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors and also as the Finance Chair for VACO. And I'm pleased to be here and spend a few minutes to introduce our moderator, our panelists today. First and foremost, I have Senator Barker on my left, Senator Hanger, as well as the Majority Leader Kilgore, and we'll introduce them kind of one at a time. We'll start with our most senior, the Honorable Emmett W. Hanger, who represents the 24th Senate District. That's what the number is at the moment. We know that it's changing. Since 1996, his district includes parts of Culpeper County, all of Madison County, part of Rockingham County, and all of Augusta and Greene counties, including the cities of Stanton and Waynesboro. He previously served as Commissioner of the Revenue and also in the House of Delegates and in the Senate. He has served as the Senate Finance Co-Chair, a Budget Conferee, and Chair of the Senate Finance and Appropriation Health and Human Services Subcommittee. He's been very involved in all aspects of the legislature, but has become an ardent supporter of matters dealing with education, mental health, and the environment. Additionally, I have Senator George Barker. Senator Barker represents the current 39th District, which includes parts of Alexandria City, southern Fairfax, and northern Prince William County, and includes part of Mount Vernon District of my district. He's elected to the Senate of Virginia in 2007. He currently sits on the General Laws and Technology, Education and Health, Commerce and Labor, and Rules Committees, as well as co-chairing the Finance Committee. He's also a member of the Joint Commission on Health Care, the Health Insurance Reform Commission, Behavioral Health Commission, the Virginia Housing Commission, the Health Workforce Development Authority, the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission, the Virginia Board of Workforce Development, and the Virginia Growth and Opportunity Board. And then third, we have Majority Leader Kilgore, the Honorable Terry G. Kilgore. He's the Majority Leader, has been a member of the House of Delegates, representing the citizens of the 1st Legislative District since he was first elected in 1993. As delegate, he represents Scott and Lee counties, part of Vice County, and the city of Norton. In 2022, he was elected to serve as the House Majority Leader. He also serves as a member of the House Committee on the Boards of Justice, Commerce, and Energy, where he is Vice Chair, and Rules. Leader Kilgore serves on various boards and organizations in the Commonwealth, including the Tobacco Region Revitalization Committee, the Coal and Energy Commission, the Southwest Virginia Health Authority. He also serves on the Appalachian Regional Commission Interstate Compact Commission, the Southwest Virginia Cultural Heritage Foundation, Southwest Virginia Higher Education Center, and the Southwest Virginia Public Education Consortium. So we've got some very capable, knowledgeable folks, long-serving, and frankly can help us interpret where things are likely to go. And to get us started, I wanted them to particularly focus on the investments that they've all made in government and for the residents, and kind of how they see, not only for the state overall, really the personal priorities or the priorities of their district as well, and how those resources should be allocated, and frankly where and how local government can best deliver those services with the support of the state. We absolutely appreciate their partnership with local government. We know it's an essential part of what we do, an essential part of our being successful in what we do. We hope they give us a little bit of a preview on what the 2023 session is going to look like. Again, what we heard in the previous presentation and discussion is that the state government's got a lot of money coming, and it sounds like things are very, very rosy right now. I think we're all wondering what the next step will be and what that impact will be, but regardless, the state surplus will be continuing. So I would ask them, particularly as they start to make their own opening remarks, that they keep in mind the major issues that are financial and state budget related for the session, but also how they can best impact and support the efforts of local government and help us meet our responsibilities and needs of our local residents. So with that, I'm going to ask each of them to give a 5 minutes or so opening comments, and then we'll go to Q&A session and run from there. So thank you, gentlemen. So how do you want to start?
Okay.
And then we'll go to
What, you want me to
you can just sit there. I'm going to move this. You'll just sit.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you. Well, good morning, or good afternoon. No, still morning. Good morning. Good morning. I don't think well when I'm sitting down. Sit up and stand up. Actually, I don't think much better when I'm standing up either. But it's the proximity of my brain. Yes. Well, I've had the opportunity to be with y'all last night and interact with you, quite a number of you, and this morning in the session. So I'm just going to begin with some, Jim Redwald, obviously he put the facts out there. He always does that. So now I want to share a little bit of nonsense with you, and then we'll go from there. And then as you have specific questions, we'll try to address those as well. The meeting this morning was impactful for me, as we had the discussion for all of you that were in this room this morning. That was impactful because I could relate to it, not in terms of the accomplishments of those three gentlemen have had, but in terms of what led me to the path that I'm currently on. So I just thought I'd just spend a moment on that first, because I was very much a backwoods person from a hillbilly family. My mom and dad they graduated in the 7th grade, so the ultimate achievement for them was to graduate from high school. So I never focused on going to college. But I had some people who basically kicked me in the seat of the pants when I was in high school in Augusta County. And I had signed up for the apprenticeship program at Newport News shipbuilding, and that's where I was going to go. I was president of my senior class, and so people thought I had some potential. But then I got a late call that that some people wanted to recruit me to come play basketball down at James Madison, which was Madison College at that time. So at any rate, to make a long story short, I started my freshman year because I was taller than the girls on the team, and so they weren't offering large scholarships at that time, so I had to start working after my freshman year. By my freshman year, the highlight of my basketball college career was we went up to George Mason, and I scored 29 points. So that's something I remind my children of constantly, and now grandchildren. I tell them about how I was able to do that, have this tremendous career, which obviously at that point in time, was not that great. But it led me to a college education and an opportunity to become somewhat of a community leader in my area and pursue a lot of things that I enjoy with the interaction with people all over my county, my region, and now all over the state. So I see a bunch of friends out there, so I'm glad y'all are there. I'm also glad y'all at a distance in case you're planning to throw something at me when I say something you don't like. Got a couple notes here. There's been a JLARC study, and I'm going to get a whole lot into that because Senator Barker may want to expand on that a little bit. I'm not on JLARC, but Senator Barker told me all about it, so now he didn't do it personally. He has a story to tell as well, because he was somewhat, I think, of a country bumpkin from East Tennessee, and would probably still be down there making moonshine if it had not been that he learned to run real fast, keeping away from bears in the Smoky Mountains. So it led him to an athletic career as being a fast runner, which he still does. So this athletics will lead you places. But J.R. was commissioned to find out how we can make our tax system more progressive. At least that was ultimately where they were getting with that. And they came up with a number of recommendations about how that could happen. Obviously, it's pretty flat right now because you can be in poverty and still max out on 5.75%. So we made some adjustments, and I think the others may want to speak to that a little bit in more detail. But we made some adjustments in correcting that this past year, but we still have more work to do in that area. We need to increase personal exemptions. We need to increase the standard deduction. That's a given. What we need to do on the other part of that, though, when we are not the beneficiaries of a lot of federal money that's flowing around in the aftermath of COVID, remains to be seen. Because I for one think that probably to be progressive, we're going to have to at some point look at a rate structure, which was first invented in 1928, 2%, 3%, 5%, and 5 3/4 now, which was added later, in terms of capitalizing on the wealth that we enjoy in this Commonwealth. And we are a very wealthy Commonwealth in total, but there are a lot of disparities, and that's something that I hope we can better address through some reform in our tax system. I first made a run at tax reform in a big way almost 20 years ago now, when I worked as co-chair with Bob McDonald of the Tax Reform Commission, 2002-2003. 2003, Bob McDonald and he and I got together recently to talk about this event in terms of what we did then and what still needs to be done now. But Bob was smarter than me, so he resigned from the commission when things started to get a little hot and ended up the governor of the state. And I ended up with my picture in the middle of that Grover North was published of the least wanted politicians in Virginia. So at any rate, that was an experience. And one of the things that I said, 2003, then Harry Parrish was chair of the House Finance Committee at that time. He and I then led the commission through 2003 when Governor Warner was there. And I made a remark in front of the committee, which was widely published. Apparently, I read about it in a paper in California that said, had I made the comment that I made that day, I would have been shot on the spot. Now, there are people still that might want to shoot me, maybe even Kilgore, because I said our tax rate on tobacco at that time was 2.5 cents, lowest in the nation. And I proposed that we increase it to 30 cents. Well, I said I would have been shot up on the spot a few years earlier, but we ultimately then ended up, we passed it on to Governor Warner and ultimately got there. And as you know, a couple years ago, we did some work in the Assembly to expand that authority so those of you with counties can endure that benefit in terms of broadening your tax base. We still have a little work to do on how tax stamps and all of that, and getting these regional authorities together. So that's something that has paid dividends. Bob McDonald and I decided as our primary thrust, we want our tax system to be simple, fair, and adequate. Simple and fair is tough, and adequate is something that people don't want to do, because occasionally you have to raise taxes, and that's always a part of the picture. And that's where I really appreciate you folks that work government at the local level, because you have to sit there in front of the people that elected you and routinely adjust your tax rate to make sure you have enough money to pay the bills. We don't do that as well at the state level, and they don't do it at all at the federal level, since they discovered that they can spend all kinds of money and not have to raise taxes. They're too high to start with, but they don't have to make choices. They just print money and make everybody happy and keep getting reelected. So we have to do it a little bit differently in Virginia. All right, just quickly, since we were supposed to do 5 or 10 minutes, I'll let you kind of do a filibuster so that you don't have to ask me other questions. At any rate, one of the things that is controversial, when I had an opportunity to co-chair the Senate Finance Committee, staff asked me if I wanted to push hard on it. I said, well, let's wait. We probably shouldn't wait. But we've got to readdress the composite index. Specifically, we have to take into account land use, and there's some other things that we need to do within the composite index, because there's no way to address the disparities that we have around the Commonwealth with the current composite index. And that's what it was intended to do. That's what it's all about, trying to address disparities in terms of the funding that would come from the state and local governments. In that respect, there's one issue that some of you like, and you will disagree with me on this, but currently, this goes back 4 or 5 years, we've authorized several localities and a referendum to have an additional bidding on the sales tax. Okay? Pennsylvania actually approved it just last week, I believe. All right? The problem I have with that is you got winners and losers, and it really doesn't address the disparities. We're okay with it if a county that doesn't have a Walmart or a large retail center that wants to tax themselves an additional penny, because that doesn't upset the apple cart. But what if Prince William decides to do that? We might think differently about that with all the people that shop at Potomac Mills and the tax base that's there. My point being that if we're going to increase the sales tax, which I think we probably will at some point, or somebody will if I'm not there, then it should run through our funding formulas so that we address disparities. Because you have winners and losers depending on where the Walmart's located right now in rural localities. And that's the overall arching issue that I have with that. So, and ultimately, and this was my goal 20 years ago, and it sure should be one of the goals that we have now in legitimate tax reform that's broad-based, is relieving the pressure on real estate tax. Now, y'all are confronted with it right now with dilemmas, because you got significant increasing values with your real estate portfolios, and you got citizens that sometimes not be able to afford that unless you adjust your rates and compensate in some way. All right. The other thing about tax that I don't like is we're increasingly, and I'm not going to single out any localities that are enjoying that luxury right now, but we are relying too heavily on sin taxes, gambling everywhere. It used to be, you could get a little window going in Virginia, but not much else. But right now we're hitching our wagon on easy come money, and that's something we need to watch out for. And certainly I'm all for those localities that are going to be casino gambling now and be able to do some things there with that. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Spending, I'm going to focus just specifically on HHR. Broadly, our big issue for adjustment in the budget has to do with labor costs. We can't get people to work. You can't get people to work. Private business can't get people to work because they don't have enough people to work. Good example of that, I've got colleagues here from friends from Augusta County, and so I'll pick on Augusta. It's not really picking on Augusta County, it's just citing the dilemma. We're putting a lot of money now into economic development and incentives to bring new business. We're fortunate in Augusta County to have an Amazon distribution center located there, all right? And I was a part of the negotiations 3 or 4 years ago when we got the Amazon, which was a big win in Northern Virginia for Amazon to come up there. A distribution center, we're going to employ 500 people. What's the problem with that? We don't have 500 unemployed, employable people in Augusta County right now, all right? So we've got to get the cart before the horse. Some of this has to do, in my opinion, immigration policy at the federal level. We need more immigrants. Our families aren't producing enough kids. I'm doing my share at 5. I got 16 grandkids. I'm working on it. But we're going to have to get some more immigrants coming in here to build the base of employment that we need. So we need that. Specifically in HHR, we in social services need a lot of people that we can't afford to hire right now. So we're going to have to address that. I've got a number of other points here, but I'll come back to those if y'all ask me specific questions. Thank you all.
All right, I'm George Barker, and I represent, as was stated earlier, parts of Alexandria, Fairfax, and Prince William County in Northern Virginia right now. But Emmett tracked me down, and he did get it right. I was raised a hillbilly from East Tennessee, so not too far from Delegate Kilgore's place down there. So we could be almost kissing cousins. been doing a lot of things in Northern Virginia, but actually been in Northern Virginia since I finished graduate school in 1975, so it's been 47 years. So but I still have some of our relatives down in Tennessee, go down there a good bit on different things. But anyway, just to follow on the athletic career, I sat on the bench in high school and almost never got to play on the basketball team. But I kept working at a few little things here and there, and I made the Senate basketball team. Now, the Senate basketball team, we play every year. We play the house, and every year we lose. They have 100 people, and they're young. We have 40, and we're old. So it's a little bit of a lopsided game sometimes. But actually, a couple of years ago, we had one game that we were ahead by 2 points with 2 seconds left in the game, and the son of the Speaker of the House of Delegates hit a 3-pointer to beat us by 1 point. So even when we're doing good, we can't even win. So anyway, we actually do work together very well on a lot of things, and I'll just touch on a couple of things as it relates specifically to the budget and those types of things. We've gone through a lot of different times in Virginia. We used to be in the 80s and 90s when I was not in the General Assembly, but was paying attention and doing a little lobbying down here on a few issues and those types of things. We had a pretty flat, steady growth in revenue, and we were able to do a lot of things, and there was a good bit of consistency. However, then once we hit this century, the first 16 years from 2000 to 2016, the average change in revenue growth or decrease during those 16 years was 7% every year. So if you had a 7% increase one year, that meant the next year you're either going up 14% or down to 0. So, we had a lot of ups and downs during that period, and it did create a lot of problems in terms of maintaining the system that we have here in terms of being able to support the localities, the school systems, the other services that are needed. But we did, sort of struggle through it. We had a major problem with the Great Recession hit in 2008, 9, and 10. But other than that, we actually did fairly well on things, despite the increases and decreases and the erratic things. One of the things they did teach us was don't count on getting the same growth rate you got last year. But we have actually worked on that a little bit, and in the last couple of years we have had a substantial growth rate in our revenues. And some of you may have heard a good bit about that in another session that was here this morning. But actually what we have dealt with is we had our revenue started picking up somewhat in 2019 and 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And everybody figured we were going to be in horrible shape. We had part of the basic lockdown steps that were initially taken. In April and May of 2020, we had reductions from the same months, April and May of 2019, that were about 25 to 30% decreases in revenues coming in. So there was a major impact for that last 2 months, the last 3 months of the 2020 fiscal year. However, we have an entity called GACR, the Governor's Advisory Commission on Revenue Estimates, that meets to look at sort of helping the administration figure out sort of what they think are going to be the revenue increases or decreases over the next year or so each year. And also sometimes other times of the year when there's some erraticism on things. That year we had the expectation from the tax office here, also had input from a number of economists, and the basic consensus was that our revenues were going to go down. There was going to be a decrease in revenue because of the impact that the pandemic was having upon the economy. But the interesting thing was that after those 2 months of 5% or so in April and May of 2020. In June of 2020, we actually had more revenue come in than we had in June of 2019. And so it was rather surprising, but my background is in economics and public health, so I got majored in college and then worked in the healthcare field and a lot of different things. And also, so I began looking at, what were the fundamentals of the economy and what were our trends now that we thought would be able to sustain it. So while we have legislators who are on that, as well as a lot of business people from across the Commonwealth. And there was a lot of discussion, and the initial discussion was talking about, well, we might be down 5%, maybe 7% in revenue, but we might have an uptick a little bit. It's only a 2% decrease. And I decided, okay, I concluded that we were going to be going up, not down. And when it came my turn to talk, I said, well, I disagree with most of the people here. And I understand that what's driving a lot of the perception that our revenues are going to go down. But in the end, I looked at the numbers, and I think our increase is going to have a significant increase, and it's going to be over 5%. And everybody thought I was crazy. We ended up that year with a 13% increase in revenue. And it's just continued on since then. Even so far this year, even though we did some tax reductions, which in and of itself reduces the revenues a little bit on some things, we are still up about 7 to 9%. We reduce a little bit from month to month, but we are still in a very strong position and still are looking very good there. We did, and that even is what we're looking at now, even with the reductions that we did on the tax rates on a number of different things. We did a standard deduction. We took Emmett's advice and did a tax rebate of $250 per adult there. So we got you all, I hope, got your checks back in October. That's when they were going out. So we did that too. We dealt with 2/3 of the grocery tax issue, and I'll talk a little bit about the 1/3 that you get to keep. So that was the one that we did on that. And then we had some business taxes where we lowered them. We also had increased the earned income tax credit, which helps a lot of the lower to moderate income people in our localities across the Commonwealth there. So we actually did a lot of reduction in taxes. The biggest component of it was a standard deduction. Going forward for this year, we are going to, I think, do certainly a little bit more assessment of where we are on the tax side. There's no guarantee we're going to continue with decreases in tax rates this year, but there's certainly a possibility that will be there. We did not go quite as far as some people had hoped that we would on the standard deduction, but we did do a major increase. It's an $8,000 increase pretty much across the board there. So that in terms of how much you can deduct, you claim a reduction from the standard in the standard deduction. And certainly we heard a good bit from people who are taking the standard deduction because the federal standard deduction went so much higher. There's this disparity between what the feds have had and what we've had at the state level here. So we narrowed the gap on that considerably. We did put a cap on the last $500 there to be able to say that if the revenues don't continue to rise the way they have the last couple of years, we would back it down to that. But we still would be significant increases in the standard deduction there. On the grocery tax, we had different opinions there between the House of Delegates and the Senate. And the Senate did agree to 2.5%. 1% of that would go to the state fund for education and support the monies going out to the school systems around the Commonwealth. Half penny would go to transportation, and another penny would stay with localities. We did take on the state taxes that were built in there, the 1.5% for education and transportation, but for the localities in the Senate, we said we didn't want to get rid of that. We wanted to make sure that our localities have the strength. And part of what has led a lot of us in the Senate to say we're not going to take that away from the localities. What had been promised was that you would get money from general fund from the state. You have plenty of money right now. But I'll tell you what happens if you don't pay attention on those types of things. Within 5 to 7 years, almost certainly, you would have lost that money. We would have hit a bump somewhere along the way, and guess who's ended up being the ones that end up suffering there? We would not continue, I'm sure, at the rate we had on there with the grocery tax. So we may have a little more discussion on the grocery tax this year, but I think we'll be able to hold the line again and hopefully protect the localities across the Commonwealth. On the expenditure side, we actually did a fair amount of a number of things on the education support for our K through 12, and also a huge amount, large increase for the higher education facilities, particularly with most of that, a lot of that increase being assistance for low and moderate income families, and be able to increase the number who are receiving assistance from the school, the students that are at the higher education institutions. At the local level for the schools, we did also tackle an issue that we had been limiting funding for school systems. In 2009, when we were in the midst of the Great Recession and our revenues were going down to a significant extent, one of the years, and somewhat in another year, there was a support cap for some, and put in place in 2009 to say for school systems, we're not going to give the state share of the monies that are owed to the localities as part of the agreement that had been in place for 40 years or whatever. We would do it for the teachers to build into the re-benchmarking, but not do it for anybody else that was hired. And so what has happened over the last, and actually we told the localities, well, within 2 to 3 years, we'll come back and get it back to where it should be. Well, it took us 13 years, and this year we finally did it, and we got started on it in a significant way to be able to unfreeze the state funds for support positions. And support positions are everybody from the principal to the bus driver to the psychologist to everybody other than the teachers, even to teachers' aides in there. So we're going to do that, and we're going to hopefully, we got $282 million we put into the budget for this biennium, and we're going to continue to work on that, and that will be one of the things that we will focus on this year. So, all right.
I think Emmett just reminded me, what time's y'all's nap in the Senate? So we got to finish this up here pretty. You're already late for your nap. We got to finish this up here pretty fast. But I've been down the street at the House Appropriations Committee retreat that started this morning. So I've got some new numbers, but not really. I don't know how great they are, but it looks like we're still going to have a surplus somewhere around $2.8 billion. And Emmett and I have been here, and George too. We've been here long enough to go through the good times and bad times, and you know that those bad times are coming. And that's the other good thing that we found out this morning, that we have totally invested in our rainy day fund, so that when it starts raining, then we will be able to meet our needs. You know, with the tax cuts, you know, it's less than 5%, not even close to 5% of the budget that we cut this year. So, you know, the main thing that we don't know, you know, the third quarter was looking good. We still had a 10.3% growth rate, but the fourth quarter is where we take in a lot of money, non-withholding and withholding, so we don't know what that's going to be. We look, you know, maybe a little bit of bad news coming in. We got the Gator meeting next Monday where we're going to know a little bit more about what's going on there and with our economists and things of that nature. So we'll see as it goes. But all in all, you know, I'm pretty optimistic of what we're going to be doing over the next few months. Pretty optimistic of where our budget's going to be. But you know, next year and the year after, who knows? It depends on whether we get into that recession. Whether it's coming or not. I know the Fed's doing a lot of work right now to try to stave that off. So it's something that we're going to have to watch. You know, they said that inflation wasn't going as fast, and the stock market reacted. So you know, we just don't know what's going to happen. I know Emmett mentioned the casino. I can tell you from being in Bristol. Down that way, that you know, the Bristol casino is about 300% above projections right now. That's amazing. That's amazing. So, but you know, the good thing that we did down there is we shared the tax money, some of the tax revenues, with all the other localities, along with Bristol. So your other localities, you know, like Scott, Dickinson, and others, they're going to be getting a share of that money. So that was something that we all, as legislators, said, hey, if we're going to do this, let's make sure that the rural counties share. So, you know, representing rural Virginia, you know, growing up there, you know, it was very rural. You know, Emmett, you talked about, and George talked about being in rural. You know, I lived so far back, I had to drive 3 miles toward town to hunt. So, I mean, that was pretty bad. But, you know, economic development is very important. What do we do? You know, I think you're going to see the house, from our standpoint, we're going to invest in more marketing money for VEDP. If you look at other agencies in other states, Georgia, Ohio, some of the other states we compete against all the time, they're like 5 or 6 times our marketing money. Well, what you want to be when a CEO decides where they want to come, where they want to go, you want to be at the top of their mind. You want to be on their mind. So we're going to have to spend some more money on marketing. You know, we've made investments on mega sites, and that's something that we see that we're going to have to play in that game. We lost 2 major projects because we weren't ready to go. And we're going to have to be ready to go as it relates to getting those big jobs. But from rural Virginia, if you get 5,000 jobs, where are you going to house them? Where are you going to, how are you going to educate them? What are we going to do there? So that's something that we're going to have to work on with our housing, with, you know, DHCD, others who are in housing markets. You don't have that big of an issue up in Northern Virginia, but still, you put that many more folks into your communities. How do you address that issue? So we're going to have to look more at housing and whether that's rehabbing. You know, we thought about in Southwest Virginia coming up with a homestead act where you come and live, and we'll help you. We got a lot of these old coal camps where we'll help you revitalize the house, and you know, if you'll stay there, we'll give it to you. But we're still working on that, trying to figure that out. And this may be a little bit controversial, but I think we need a tax study again in Virginia. You know, we've just not looked at it. We've not looked at the whole issue in a long time. How are we competing with other high-growth states? You know, the main difference in other high-growth states in Virginia is they don't have an income tax. How do we do that? How do we get there? I mean, of course, they tax everything else that's going, and they tax a lot of other things that we don't in Virginia. But you know, when some of these high wealth individuals that are looking to invest in jobs, and they look at Florida, they look at Texas, they look at Tennessee, my neighbor right across the line, and my constituents roll all over to Tennessee, pay the 10, 11 cent sales tax, and think nothing of it. So it's something that we're going to have to study. We're going to have to figure out how to take a more balanced approach as we move forward. I'm hoping that we'll start on that soon, just to study that. And I'm hoping that they can play a big role in that. But no, thank you for inviting me, and I know that I've got two colleagues here that can answer almost any question that you have for them in this area. But it's good to be here with you, and thank you all for all that you do on a daily basis. You're where the rubber meets the road. You're the folks that get most of the complaints most of the time. Of course, people call my office. I see Danny Man back there about roads and things like that. But most of the time, I just send them. I give Danny's cell number and just move on. So thank you all.
Thank you, Majority Leader. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to just ask one question to get us going, and then if you could kind of raise your hand, we'll get a mic over to you for the next question. But I'll get one to get us kicked off, and then we'll go from there. So the first question I have is the one that I think most of us are most focused on, because it is the one that the legislators spent a lot of time debating, which is the grocery tax and what happens with us, and how do we ensure that frankly, local government isn't the loser in that process. So I know, Senator Barker, you spoke about it some, and I'll give you a chance to maybe start it off since you've already spoken some about it, but I know we're interested in your other thoughts about that, and how do we, if there is a change in that, how do we assure that local government doesn't become a long-term loser as a result of that? Senator Barker, I don't know if you want to add anything to the comments you've already made, or
I added just a little bit to it. As I said, we took it from 2.5% down to 1%, and the 1% that we left, it goes directly to the local governments there. And I expect that we will take the same position in the Senate this year and hopefully be successful in maintaining that, because we want to make sure that the localities have the resources there. And as I said, my perspective on this is that if we ever got rid of that 1 penny and said, okay, we're going to give you the same amount of money you would have gotten from that, don't trust us. Then all you got to do is look at the support cap positions. In 2009, we said, we'll fix it in 2 to 3 years. It took us 13. And that we're still not going to fix, but at least we started. So I think, I guess it's okay. I think that Terry down there is, one of his shenanigans. But anyway, guys, I think we're going to be successful and make this in the Senate, and I hope again working with the House to be able to keep that penny for the localities there.
I think Senator Barker first covered it fairly adequately. I think certainly on the Senate side, and I believe on the House side, there's the problem, of course. I think there is a commitment that we want to take the sales tax off of food. Okay, the issue is how we make local governments whole. If we go all the way, obviously, that other penny that we took off was finding its way mostly back to local governments, and the half penny, of course, is transportation. So initially, I didn't support removing any of that. If you go back 20 years ago with the Tax Reform Commission that worked on then, my concept was that we should leave it all on so it would be complicated at the point of sale, but then it'd have a credit on your income tax return based on the size of the family to offset that. And the reason for going that direction was the people with the affluence, they're going to be buying the caviar and the ribeye steaks, and the people out there in my neck of the woods might be buying flour to make bread and pinto beans. So there's a disparity there that could be addressed if we ran it through the tax return credit.
I see that Emmett wanted it based on family size. We heard how big his family was. I think the good thing about it, this is a short session. So I don't think we're going to be tackling that. But I've always said that if we were able to remove the do tax, and there was some movement on that, but we had to figure out how to make sure that the county stayed whole. And I think that's a commitment on both sides of the aisle. We got to make sure it stays whole because, you know, if you get out in rural Virginia, there's not a lot of taxable, the basis of this taxable as it is up in Fairfax. So, I mean, I'm not throwing off on Fairfax, but that's just the way it is. So we have to figure that out.
Thank you. I know we have a question.
Is it on? Yeah, it's on. Billy Kiger from Roxann County. Imagine that when I talk to these guys. First of all, I think we owe all three of these gentlemen a round of applause because they have come and been a part of what we are here in local government, and they have steadfastly defended us in the General Assembly year in and year out, and we greatly appreciate your efforts to do that. I want to say that lightly because I greatly accuse the bandits in Richmond of not paying their bills. So one thing I want to leave with you, you guys keep talking about a surplus. There's no surplus until you pay the bills, guys. We have roads that need to be built better. The plans that we have for Ag 81 are woefully inadequate and construction. That road needs to be 3 lanes, or at least 4 lanes from Bristol to Winchester, and we're getting ready to build a moving parking lot from Bristol to Winchester. So money can be better spent on construction projects, one-time things that you don't have to go in debt for, and will create jobs that will create more of an income tax collection for you at whatever level you set it. It will allow people more money to have disposable income to buy groceries and spend whatever percent tax they're going to have to spend on that, and buy cars and buy homes and provide jobs that will stabilize the economy, not just in the short term, like a $250 rebate for beer and potato chips, but a job that will provide income and resources for months and years to come. So just please keep that in mind. I know it's politically convenient to say that we have a surplus, but pay the bill first. And then if there's a nickel left, you have a surplus. Thank you.
Other questions, just please raise your hand. There we go. Did you all have any comments on the general?
I think from the House Central, we're going to have a plan to move forward on 81. As I was driving up last night, I had to get off at Christiansburg to go around the old way because I-81 was a parking lot last night. So, yeah, so I agree totally.
I'll just jump in real quick. For the last several years, been chair of the Transportation Subcommittee, the Finance Committee, and now I'm co-chair of the whole Finance Committee as well. And so we have made major investments in transportation. We are working on a number of things, and we've done some smaller projects on 81, but we need to get the whole thing taken care of. And with the investments that we made from the surplus funds that we had in both of the last, in the 21 session and again in 22, we have finished what we wanted to do to get widening I-64 all the way from Richmond to the Hampton Roads area. And so we now have that fully funded, and the next on the list is 81.
Yeah, I would just concur with that because I did a remark on transportation, and my remark on transportation, I'll say it now, we can adequately spend everything we get our hands on in that. So I don't support any program spending the gas tax. We actually are now, because of some changes we made 2 years ago and then moving forward, are having, at this point, an adequate revenue flow into our transportation system. But I took note, and I was at the table when the decision was made to spend some general fund dollars on 64 East. So, it's our turn now in the valley. So we're going to put that money up there. And we've also, for you folks in Northern Virginia, I was part of that bill with Dick Zaslaw, so that we're Big 66 moving in. So y'all got some big things going on up there, which is looking much better than it was. The problem is, and hindsight hindsight is always good. We should have done it 20 years ago. And that fellow Grover Norquist, I mentioned, he's the one who messed it up for us. Because he had all my buddies signing these no tax plates. We couldn't read the penny on the gas tank.
We'd love to get $100 million back in Northern Virginia for our metro and other systems too. That are essential. Tomorrow we're going to be dedicated to so-called roads. So those investments take, in this case, decades, but they do make a huge difference in the economies, local economies. So.
John Bruder, Essex County, very rural county. Ag and forestry are our bread and butter. But we do believe in land use to protect those. We really appreciate what the legislation did last year with the Forestry Sustainability Fund. It was $1 million, but we need more. We need to fund our schools. This is a way, a mechanism to do it. So if you all would please comment on the Forestry Sustainability Fund and what you all think this next budget year will increase that to, would be great. Thank you.
Next person, if you raise your hand, we'll get a comment from the. Raise your hand for the question, then they can answer while we're going to the next question.
Okay. I guess my direct answer is yes, I would support, a significant increase beyond that because it's paying big dividends. We actually need to have a real need. We're great at growing pine, but we're efficient in hardwoods, and we need to expand that and be money well spent. So I would support that initiative to go significantly higher than that in the Senate budget.
She's going to the next question. Do you see any significant movement on, obviously, the amount of one-time monies, if you will, because of the surplus, the extra money, I shouldn't say surplus, because I agree it's not, but do you see other one-time money that would be allocated for something in addition to transportation? Any other highlights or any other particular elements that you would see would be potential places for that one-time money?
We want to continue to invest in mega sites. We want to continue, maybe increase that a little bit, some one-time money, but maybe some one-time money in some of your colleges, some of your colleges' requests and things of that nature. But we've got to be very careful because we don't know the next year, what's going to be happening in the next year. So we got to be very cautious about it.
We did, in this current budget that was negotiated, of course, the Park was at the table on that, leading some of those conversations, put about $2.5 billion into capital cash, in capital rather than bonds. And those of you holding municipal bonds, that didn't help you at all because that bond market kind of fell by the wayside a little bit over the last number of months. But we thought it prudent to do that. The other big piece of that, and we haven't added today on that, is our backlog of maintenance needs, deferred maintenance. And one of the areas that I'm keen on right now is our state park system, where I'd like to see us put an ad money, we put like $46 million, I believe, this year, we cash in that. But the backlog is significantly larger than that. And parks is one of my favorite areas. I want to see us expanding our parks. People are into outdoor recreation in a big way. And that's one of the ways that we can basically enhance rural communities without turning them into urban communities.
Yeah, Phil North, Roanoke County. I just want to share some information. It's not really a question, but a suggestion. In 2019, the Roanoke Valley Allegheny Regional Commission conducted a study to measure how many trucks that would be equivalent to 4 containers on a rail car could be shifted off I-81 to rail. And they looked at the volume of trucks over 500 miles that passed through Virginia, say from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, going all the way through the Commonwealth, Bristol, onward to Atlanta, or Birmingham. Guess how many equivalent rail cars, 4 containers, would equalize just on the lowest strategy one out of 5 strategies. I'm not going to quote y'all 5 strategies. 125,000 intermodal rail cars. The intermodal franchise at CSX and Norfolk Southern is just the highest demand that there is. It costs $5 million to build a mile of interstate or more. It costs only $1 million to build a mile of welded rail My suggestion would be, and maybe this is going on behind the scenes, that discussions with CSX and Norfolk Southern continue if they are ongoing, or if they're not, to reactivate them, because we need to get those trucks off of 81 onto rail. Because while we've got $2.7 billion a day on projects, there are even more projects that are in discussions on 81. And if we could just get 10% of that potential rail traffic converted onto rail from the road to interstate, it would help on the maintenance of the interstate, as well as maybe contain some of the costs that we're looking at putting on the interstate. Because the more money we put on it, I-81 is one of the most heavily trafficked interstates with commercial trucks in the whole United States of America. So just something for maybe a potential JLARC study. Thank you.
There are some discussions going on in dealing with some of those issues, but we also have had tremendous success with our passenger rail system, and particularly the rail categories, rail passengers going from Northern Virginia, from the District of Columbia, those types of areas to Lynchburg and Roanoke, and we're going to look at started funding an extension down into the Christiansburg area, and we're looking at coming all the way down to see Terry down there in Mercer.
In addition to those which highlight passenger rail success, two things. One, we have invested in Prince William area Manassas, in the bottleneck that was there, $1 billion in long bridge to expedite that. The real problem is market pressures right now. People running business or retail outlets with their distribution centers, they want to deliver tomorrow morning, not possibly 2 weeks from now. So it really is something that our whole country is behind on that, behind Europe on that, and we really do need to rethink what we do here in terms of investment.
Other questions? I'll ask another question. Please raise your hand so the kid can come to you, but let me ask a question rather than feeling. So much of what you all do is trying to anticipate where things are going and putting together studies and other kinds of efforts to bring a consensus to a particular issue. I recognize it's a short session coming up, but there's things in this short session that are essential for what you hope to get done a year from now. If you can identify any of those kinds of things that you're looking at to try to prep for the next, in fact, the governor's first full budget too.
I think one thing that I think from the House's standpoint is we need to look at workforce. Workforce. We need to go in and revamp the whole area. It's we've got a lot of folks doing workforce, and if you look at other states, what they're doing in workforce is they're just leading us pretty bad at it. And we just really need we put almost $600 million a year in workforce, and we need some more accountability on where that money's going. So I think that we're going to look at it. Are we going to get it all addressed this session? I doubt it, but we need to start on workforce because we need to be ready for that next big mega site, that next big job, whether it's Amazon or whoever it is. We need to be ready for that, and we've got to address the workforce issue. We're going to do that.
Yeah, I'll jump in and support my friend Delegate Kilgore on that issue. I'm heavily involved in workforce issues and actually looked at studies, taken that as a career at one point. But we have, actually in the last 2 years, we've made significant progress, but we're still not where we need to be in terms of workforce development. And what we have now is we have some of the systems that are doing workforce development are mature enough and they've been able to operate well. We're going to leave many of those alone, but we're looking at, been working with the Secretary of Labor, Secretary Slater, and he's coming up with a proposal now that's going to be coming to the General Assembly this year. And we're going to hear about it more extensively at our finance committee retreat that we have on Thursday and Friday this week, to be able to get more money in productive use in the workforce development to make sure that we can provide the jobs that people need, but also the jobs that the businesses need. And we need to do a lot more of that. And also working ahead of the chair of the board for the Health Workforce Authority, which is a separate entity from the state operations as well. So there are a lot of things we can do, and we have tremendous potential. Our unemployment rate is down to about 2% now, which is incredibly low. What we need to do is help some of those people who dropped out of the workforce during the pandemic, give them the opportunity to get back into good, well-paying jobs.
I think one of the problems we're going to encounter in this next session, if we start looking at meaningful studies that we might want to engage in, is the fact that this is going to be a critical election cycle with the redistricting and with the Senate being up for, we don't pay attention when the House is up for election. But when we have to get elected too, with the Senate, people will want to get out of Richmond quickly this winter, which is a good thing, but not go back and go after the elections probably. And so I don't think we'll get many meaningful studies. The studies I think that need to move forward. Terry mentioned the possible need for another tax reform commission and in-depth. I think that would be important for us to become engaged in. I think we should have, and this is one of Terry's areas down in the whole country, he's been a leader in, and this is on energy. We really need a good study on our trying to develop smart strategies for smart grid in the Commonwealth. Nationally, we need to do that. I think we can be a leader here in Virginia. We know where things are going, and some of us are resisting electric cars as an example, but we're going to need a smart grid, so let's get busy and build a smart grid, with the energy there that we need to do all these things that are coming with technology. And related to that with the energy, I think we need more study on deployment of solar and alternative energy sources, but that would tie into that particular study.
Excellent, thank you. And back to you.
Yes, I had just wanted to make a statement, Meg Bonke from Stafford. I just wanted to share with you a conversation that we had in the Education Steering Committee yesterday, and we were honored to have Secretary Slater with us, and all the revamping that he shared with us regarding the workforce boards, the fact that they've operated in silos, they're dysfunctional. But I want to share with you something that resonated with all of us in the Education Steering Committee, is how important it is that we work with not just the elementary school kids, that we've got to get to these kids when they're young. And those kids that know they might not go to college, you can get a certificate, but you still have to do well in school because you're probably going to have to do math. And that we've got to keep these kids engaged. And what we heard him say is that he's working as the Secretary of Labor with the Secretary of Education. And we just talked about that, and you'll see it in our platform that we approve tomorrow, that workforce is really important, and we moved it way up in our legislative item. So I just wanted to share that with you, that every person sitting around the committee, the table at the Education Committee, Steering Committee, agreed that we have to work with our educators, our superintendents throughout the Commonwealth. And thank you so much for being here.
Do you want to make comments on that? I would just add, as a former school board member and chair of the Fairfax County School Board, and obviously now board supervisor member, my passion has always been career technical education. In my first year on the school board, we didn't treat certifications of skills the same as we treated AP and IB exams, and we changed that. I got the board to agree to pay for the testing the same as we did AP and IB. We went from 700 certifications a year, 700 a year, to when I got off the school board in 2015, we had 17,000 certifications, and every one of those certifications is money in the bank for somebody because they have a skill that gets them a better job. We work very closely now with West Virginia Community College, but one of the things that I've seen, and I would appreciate your comments on this, NOVA is part of a state system, and it's a very kind of regulated system at the state level. And it seems like there's more regional flexibility that could be benefit, particularly with labor development and workforce development. And I just wanted to see if that was ever part of a conversation you all had, and any other thoughts you might have about trying to get those local community colleges, because they truly are our skill builders, if you will, and the workforce developers that are going to make a difference for us, at least in the short term.
I'll just say quickly, I think the community colleges can be utilized more for that type of regional cooperation. They already do quite a bit of it. We have Blue Ridge there in Central Shenandoah Valley, and they do a good job of that. We also are in terms of the model that you're looking at, we benefit greatly that there are a couple regional models for vocational training, both tech centers in the valley that are doing extremely well, that coordinate with local business to meet the need for labor. We need to do more of that.
Yeah, I'll just echo the same type of thing. But one of the other things we need to do is to make sure that we provide the flexibility for the instructors that are helping a lot of the people who are seeking a lot of these certifications, and maybe loosen some of the requirements there that require them to meet standards that are not would be something that are more on the IB and AP side of things, but are not necessary for them to be able to deal with one type of classes that they're teaching, either at the high school level or at the community college level or other types of things that are there. We often have difficulty getting faculty for positions at our institutions, including in Northern Virginia. We have a lot of that issue there, both in Nova and Mason, being able to recruit faculty.
I'll just jump in. I think we spent, 2-3 generations telling everybody they had to go to college, every kid, and we know that's not the case. There's a lot of jobs and a lot of need for jobs out there that these certificates and things of that nature. That's something that we, as legislators, we need to push, and we need to push them at younger ages, need to get into the schools and really recruit. I mean, that's what it's all about, recruiting kids and their parents. So I think that's something we have to do. Parents are key.
If there's any other last question, otherwise we will, last call. We will we'll go ahead and end this session. I want to absolutely thank Sarah Hanger, George Leader, Kilgore. Thank you very much for being part of our session today and helping us to understand what's inside that black box a little bit more, and hopefully make sure that the outcome that we all see is one that we're supportive of and appreciate. We can make a difference for all of us and the residents. So, again, thanks very much.